Hello friends, welcome to Engineering Funda family. In this video, I'll be going to explain you communication APIs in IoT. Communications API in IoT is a part of logical design of IoT. Here in this video, I'll be solving so many questions. That's why this video may be a bit longer one. Let me show you how many topics that I'm going to cover in this video. See, in this video, first I'll explain you basics of communication API. Then I'll explain you REST API in IoT. Then I'll explain you features of REST API, or one can say REST API constraints. After that, I'll explain you WebSocket API in IoT. Then after, I'll explain you differences in between REST API and WebSocket API. At last, I'll explain you horizontal scaling versus vertical scaling. So let us begin this video with first agenda, that is basics of communication API. See, API means what? API means application programming interface. Here, APIs that is used to provide software support for communication. See, here devices are communicating with internet in IoT. In IoT structure, we are having devices. Those IoT devices are interacting with internet. So when it interacts with internet, there will be so many modules that will be coming in between. So there has to have software support. That software support that is given by API, right? So API is a software intermediary that allows two applications to communicate with each other on internet. APIs ties together the connected things of internet things, right? So here APIs are used to connect things of internet of things, right? See, there is always a difference in architectural and logical differences in different modules of IoT. Like when you communicate on internet, at that time there are so many modules. So there will be architectural differences, there will be logical differences, and to provide communication in between different modules, APIs are used, right? Like you can observe here, there are different devices. There can be mobile device, there can be IoT device, there can be web browser, right? So different devices are accessing internet in IoT. So that access of internet in IoT, that is happening via API, right? See, in IoT, there are two different APIs that we use. One is REST based API and second is WebSocket based API. Let me explain you first API, that is REST based API. See, REST based API that is using HTTP protocol, and that is based on request response model. Let me take one example here that will give you more clarity. See, here we are having HTTP client. One can say you are a user and you are HTTP client. Now you want to search my website, that is Engineering Funda. So in URL, you will be writing www.engineeringfunda.co.in. So you want to access my website as a client. So you will be sending one request. That request will be forwarded as per HTTP packet. In HTTP packet, there will be HTTP command and HTTP payload. See, in HTTP command, there can be so many commands, but I have listed 4 commands only. You see, there can be GET command. GET command that is used to take data. That data could be text data, that data could be image data, that data could be video data, it could be any data. GET command that is used to take data. Put command that is used to update the data. Post command that is used to create new data, and delete command that is used to delete the data. So there can be any request forwarded by client. Based on command, there will be service, right? So GET will be there to take the data, put will be there to update the data, post is there to create the data, and delete is there to erase the data, right? And that data can be there as per REST payload. So payload can be there in form of JSON or XML. So this packet that is been forwarded by HTTP client as a request. Now that request will go to HTTP server. So HTTP server will do authorization first, and after authorization it will be using resources. Based on resources it will be preparing response. Once response is prepared, it will give response to the client. Like when you write www.engineeringfunda.co.in, then you will be forwarding HTTP packet. Based on command you will be sending request, and based on data here payload will be there. Once that request comes to HTTP server, it will be using resources. In resources there will be URIs. With the use of URIs, HTTP server will be preparing response. That response will be given back to client. And once you receive the response on your web browser, you will be observing Engineering Funda's website. That is how it is functioning. So REST based API that is using HTTP protocol, which is based on request response model, right? So here REST means what? REST means representational state transfer, and API means application programming interface, right? See, it allows software applications to communicate and interact with each other on internet. See, in IoT we will be interacting on internet. REST based API provides software support based on it, and that is based on HTTP protocol. REST API follows request response communication model, and here REST API that is using HTTP protocol for internet data exchange. Now let me explain you one practical example again with the use of request response model used by REST. So here we are having client and here we are having server. So here client will be sending request first. In that request there can be different commands. Here I have just listed 4 commands: get, put, post and delete. Get is to take the data, put is to update the data, post is to create new data, and delete is to erase the data. So that request is forwarded based on command along with data, means payload. Payload can be there in the format of JSON or XML. That request comes to server. So server will be using resources. Based on resources, it will prepare response and then it will respond to the request. That is how one request is served over here. Here, as if now client wants to have another service, then client will have to give new request, and that is been responded by server, right? So here in request response model, all the requests are served independently. It is stateless in nature, right? Here history is not stored anywhere, means past requests are not stored anywhere. Every request is served independently, right? Now I'll explain you REST API features. See, first feature is client server separation. See, here client and server both are separated. For example, see, client should not be concerned about storage, which is a concern of server. So client is not concerned about what is the storage of particular website. That is a concern of server. Server should not be concerned about user interface, which is a concern of client. So client and server both are separated over here. There is no concern of each other, right? Both are working independently and both can be developed and updated independently, right? See, second is stateless nature. Stateless nature means what? Here each request is served independently by server. Here past history doesn't matter. Every request will be served independently by server, right? So each request must contain all information to understand the request, right? It simplifies communication and reduces overhead on the server, right? Now third constraint is catchable or non-catchable. See, each request should be catchable or non-catchable. If it is catchable, then client catch is given the right to reuse the response data for later and equivalent request. But as if it is not catchable, then you will have to send request again, right? So here we will be eliminating some interaction and it will be improving efficiency and scalability, right? So here all the requests either can be catchable or non-catchable. If it is catchable, then it will be reusing the data which is available with client. But if it is not catchable, then user will have to forward request again to the server, right? So here scalability, that is very good with REST API. The reason is scalability is a concern with server or client side, right? Here both are independent in nature, right? Now next is layered system. See here entire architecture is layer by layer structured, right? All the layer are functioning independently. So here one layer cannot look beyond some other layers, right? It is interacting with next layer only. So each component cannot see beyond the immediate layer. Here client cannot tell anything directly to the server. Each request is processed layer by layer. So here layered system is there, right? See, next is uniform interface. Here this communication interface is uniform, like as if you write something like engineeringfunda.co.in in your computer, then whatever data that appears in front of you, that is the same data which will be appearing as if somebody else is writing. So uniform interface is there, right? So communication between client and server must be uniform. Resources are identified in the request as per protocols. So as per protocols only it will function. The client can update or delete the resources as per convenience, right? So as if you are having access, then only you can delete the content. Like on my website, you cannot delete the content, right? So that is based on access. See here, each layer knows how to process the message based on protocol, right? So it is based on HTTP protocol, and based on HTTP protocol, it is functioning completely, right? Next is CRUD operation. So I have already told you, to create new content, we will be using post command. To read the data or to get the data, you will be using get command. To update the data, we will be using put command or patch command. And to delete the data, we will be using delete command, right? These are the 4 operations, but there are many other operations even. For that, there are different commands. If you want to learn that, then you just go through my video based on HTTP protocol, in which I have explained all the commands in great details, right? See here, code on demand, that is another feature. See, server can provide executable code or script for the client. See here, server can provide you executable code even. It is not like only text data, image data or video data will be there. There can be executable data as well. That is up to the service how it is provided, but it is optional. It is not compulsory constraint in IoT, right? But when it comes to computer network, at that time it is not optional. But in IoT it is optional, right? Now I'll explain you next API, that is WebSocket based communication API. See, this API is quite interesting. There are 2 basic things that you need to understand first. See, first of all, you should know WebSocket based API, that is bidirectional full duplex communication. So here bidirectional full duplex communication happens. Full duplex means server and client both can exchange data simultaneously. See, in REST based API, it was based on request response. So at a time, client can give request and after that server will give respond. Bidirectional full duplex is not there. It was bidirectional, but it was half duplex in REST based API. While in WebSocket based API, bidirectional full duplex communication is possible, right? And second point that you should know, it is using exclusive pair communication model. In communication model of IoT, I have made video based on this. Still, here WebSocket based API is using exclusive pair communication model. Let me show you how. So here we are having client and server. See, to have a communication, first of all, there will be connection establishment. After that, there will be data transfer, and at last there will be connection close. So first client will be sending request for a connection. Then server will be giving response based on request. So this is handshake process. And with this handshake process, connection is getting established in between client and server. Once connection is established, client and server can exchange data in bidirectional full duplex mode, right? So you can observe here, I have shown some frames, that is bidirectional full duplex communication, right? At a time, both can transfer data with each other. And this is not stateless. Here, see history of frames that will be there with client and server, right? It is not independently served. Here there is a history with server as well as with client, and based on that this communication is happening. Once data transfer is completed, then client will be initiating connection close and server will be responding back to same, and there will be connection close, right? So here WebSocket based API that is working as per this: connection establishment, data transfer, and then connection close, right? This data transfer will be full duplex, and this data transfer will be stateful in nature. Stateful means this data exchange that is happening based on historical data. Historical means, for example, here 2 frames are forwarded, then with this third frame history will be there with last 2 frames, right? And based on that only it will be forwarding this frame. It is not based on request response, right? Now I'll explain you differences in between REST and WebSocket API. So here, first of all, you should know REST API is based on stateless. Stateless means every request is served independently. WebSocket is stateful, in which after connection establishment, data exchange will be having stateful nature, right? There will be history saved with past data once you establish the connection, right? See, REST API is unidirectional at a time, but you can say it is bidirectional but half duplex, right? It is bidirectional but half duplex. At a time it is unidirectional, and WebSocket is full duplex bidirectional, right? See, REST API works based on request response model, and WebSocket functions based on exclusive pair communication model, right? See, here there will be TCP connections, but with REST API, each request is a new connection. And with WebSocket, there is a need of single TCP connection. After that, you can exchange data, right? You don't need to provide connection again and again, right? See, overhead is very much in REST API. Why? The reason is every request is served independently. So every time there will be connection establishment and overhead along with connection. But with WebSocket, you don't need to have connection again and again. Once connection is established, data exchange will happen, so overhead will be less, right? So you will be observing REST API that is not suitable for real-time application, right? And this WebSocket API, in that you don't need to have too much overhead. That's why WebSocket is preferable in real-time application, right? See, when it comes to scalability, then one should know, see, REST scalability is easier. Why? The reason is it is stateless. While in WebSocket, scalability is difficult. Why? The reason is it is stateful. Stateful means you will have to store historical data, historical events. You will be storing history of frames. That's why stateful nature is there with WebSocket. That's why scalability is the issue with WebSocket, right? Now, I'll explain you horizontal versus vertical scaling. I have seen this question is coming for 2 marks, so I thought I should explain you this. See, when it comes to vertical scaling, then you should know we will be upgrading the device. And when it comes to horizontal scaling, at that time, one should know we are adding machines, right? So horizontal scaling means what? You will be adding more machines. Vertical scaling means what? You will be upgrading available machine, right? So that is how scaling is happening. If you add more and more machines, then you can say you are doing horizontal scaling. And if you are upgrading the machines, then you can say you are doing vertical scaling, right? For example, if you are having a computer and if you upgrade the RAM, you are doing vertical scaling. But if you use 2 computers, now you will be coming up with 3rd computer, 4th computer, then that is horizontal scaling, right? For WebSocket, horizontal scaling and vertical scaling both are combustion. Why? The reason is it is stateful in nature. And with REST API, scaling is not that big deal, right? The reason is it is stateless in nature. You don't need to store historical data. That's why. So that is how things are there with this video. I hope you have found this interesting. Still, if anything that you would like to share, please note it down in comment section. I'll be happy to help you. Thank you so much for watching this video.